Recognize Mr. Waltz for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So my district's in Northeast Florida. I grew up on Florida beaches. The seas are rising. Anyone who's grown up there knows that the beach is smaller than when I was a child. I just don't see how that's disputable. But I do want America to lead this effort. We've led the world in coal, oil, and gas development. Now we need to do it with rapidly growing clean energy markets. I think to succeed, we need a very broad portfolio of emphasis here, low-cost technologies to speed the transition to renewable, cleaner energy. I think that includes nuclear. Undeniably, I would caution my colleagues. We have seen a lot of aspirational goals lately. I think we need to be very careful about crossing the line from aspirational to outlandish goals that could harm our economy and, frankly, give the edge to our global competitors in doing so and frankly, take us backwards in this effort. So I'm very concerned as a veteran as well about the national security implications of global warming. I have firsthand seen and unfortunately could not count the amount of soldiers that have died carrying diesel fuel back and forth to outposts that we could have sustained through clean technologies. I've seen, not to mention our global supply chains, and not to mention I've spent a lot of time in Africa, Lake Chad Basin, where we're dealing with the destabilizing effects in Nigeria, Niger, what have you. So my question for each of the panelists is, what R&D? Dr. Did I say this right? Machkut? Mike, excuse me. You said we're doing pretty well in our investments, particularly relative to the rest of the world. My question for each of you is where are we not across the kind of menu of clean energy technologies? Where do we need to do more? And again, keeping this in the context of our broader economic base that I think we need to sustain all of these efforts. So where could we do more? Geothermal, and I'd ask you to choose. The answer can't be yes, all of the above.
Let me say first, we could be doing more, right? Like the scale of the challenge and a lot of the concerns that your colleagues point out about increasing costs with present-day technologies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, those are real and valid concerns. And in particular, you can't expect these things to scale unless the prices at which they're trading are competitive. Mm-hmm. So on the whole, doing more is not necessarily a bad thing, and then doing more smartly is probably the thing that the committee should really pay attention to. So the places where, when I read these IPCC reports or the National Climate Assessment or the other documents, the places where it seems like the technology hasn't caught up with the need, carbon capture and storage is one, right? This allows us to use fossil fuels for power generation and take advantage of all of their desirable characteristics without emitting greenhouse gas.
To make it more cost-effective or just to do it?
In large part, simply to do it. There are very few facilities at which this is happening.
Just in the interest of time, I mean, my understanding is the majority of our dams in the United States do not generate electricity. Nuclear accounts for about 1/5 of the United States electrical generation right now. And then, of course, we're seeing just a boom in natural gas and where we can go with that. Would you agree that those are all areas where we could make greater investments that would make a difference on this issue?
Yes.
Would any of the other panelists want to weigh in on either of those questions?
Thank you. So I'm from Massachusetts, and in Massachusetts, we've had incentives for solar energy for about a decade now, and many roofs have solar panels on them. To put a solar array on your roof now, the payback period is about 6 years before you start basically making money on your investment. It saddens me to fly over your state, frankly, because I look down and I see almost no roofs with solar panels on them, and you're just missing a huge opportunity. And yes, it took some incentives to get the ball rolling down the hill, but now the incentives in Massachusetts are disappearing, and still people are putting
I
solar on their
I would point out that in Samsula, Florida, Florida Power and Light has a 1,200 solar facility. It's estimated to provide electricity to 14,000 homes, 30 million solar panels by 2030. But I'm sure we could all collectively do more. Those are state incentives, to be clear, at
That's
the
clear.
state level.